Hello, my name is Gavin Jernigan, and I'm going to be presenting to you a business plan for my business, Gavin Jernigan Kicking and Punting. I'd like to first by thanking you for the time to allow me to discuss with you my business plan and the ideas that I have for the next 10 to 15 minutes. We'll start off with an introduction. Gavin Jernigan Kicking and Punting is essentially going to be a business that teaches and develops football kickers and punters of all ages and skill levels. Primarily, we're going to be focusing on traveling to high schools throughout the state of California during the times that they would normally be practicing anyways, and go to their practices where instead of them just kicking on their own, we're going to have a specialized coach come into the school on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to continue to work with the kickers and punters and develop their skills throughout their season and also throughout the off-season. A little bit about myself, my background. I have over 10 years of experience as a kicker and punter. I started off in high school and eventually did well enough to get recruited to play college at the Division I level and also get a full scholarship. While I was in college, I played for 4 years as a kicker and punter. I worked with other college kickers and also professional kickers, kicked in front of professional NFL coaches, and worked with other NFL players to further develop my skills, develop my teaching skills, etc. To continue on, we'll describe the mission and vision statement of Gavin Jernigan Kicking and Punting. Our mission statement is to strive to provide kickers and punters of all ages the required skills to be successful in college, both athletically and academically. To expand on this, it's good to note that not every kicker is at the same skill level on the field as well as in the classroom. So, for example, a kicker who maybe has tons of talent on the field but struggles academically might be more successful at one of the top D1 programs like Alabama, UCLA, etc. And maybe UCLA is a bad example, but another school that maybe the academic requirements are a little bit easier. Whereas conversely, some athletes may be better in the classroom, 4.0 high school students, and struggle a little bit more on the field comparatively for the Division I program, and maybe an Ivy League school or a Division II school that has strong academics might be in a better fit for them. Ultimately, we want to set them up for success, find a good fit, and then allow them to continue on in their athletic and academic careers. Our vision statement focuses a little bit more on our culture. So we're seeking to facilitate a path for young athletes to develop skills for future success well beyond their years of playing sports. We're going to be committed to these athletes and their success well beyond their years, demonstrating a culture that we're going to fulfill where they know that they're cared about and they're not just a paycheck or they're not just paying us that we can get them on. We actually care about them. We're going to talk about that a little bit further in detail later on in the presentation. As I present my business to you, I'd like to talk about the difference between blue and red oceans briefly. As many of you may know, a red ocean describes a market or industry that is saturated, something that is already in existence, something that may be approaching somewhat of a perfectly competitive market where the barriers to entry are low, however the profit margins are also low. In order for a new company to be successful, it's very valuable to find a blue ocean, which explains an industry that is not in existence. I will continue on later on and submit to you that our business model is essentially finding a blue ocean. In this scenario, demand is created rather than fought over. And the reason why that demand is created is because people don't even know that they want that demand at this point because there's not been an opportunity for this business. Essentially, from the business owner perspective, we're exploring an unknown market space by untainted competition. We'll talk about that a little bit more once we discuss the industry analysis. And of course, we want to pursue differentiation while also keeping low costs. Of course, we need to talk about who our customers are. While we're focusing our efforts in California, we're going to be looking at primarily high school students in California. As you can see by the graph, the amount of high school students in California has gradually increased over the past 3 years, approaching 2 million high school students. Of course, as we're talking about football, we need to make sure that there's enough high school football teams in California as well. We saw a little bit of a dip in 2018, but overall we're looking at about 2,400, 2,500 high school football teams in California. Take a pause here. Each football game needs to be started off with a kickoff. Therefore, every team has a kicker. Normally, a team that is relatively competitive is going to have a starter and a backup. Therefore, you have about 2 kickers on each team. Now, if we're talking about a well-developed program throughout for a high school, we're looking at a varsity, JV, and maybe even a freshman team with maybe 2 kickers on each team, maybe a punter specifically. We're talking about if we just average, each high school has 2 kickers, period, across all levels, JV, varsity, and freshman. We're expecting around 5,000 kickers available in California. The last customer segmentation portion that we're going to talk about today is California high school completers that are enrolled in high school. We actually see a decrease over the past 3 years from approaching 290,000 to 300,000 and dropping down to around 280,000, 85,000. Can't exactly attribute why this is. It's possibly because college is getting more expensive. But the point is that Gavin Jernigan and Kicking and Punting will facilitate an opportunity for athletes to possibly get scholarships to pay for that college, or just another route to college that they may not have otherwise had without the developed kicking skills. However, we're not going to only focus on getting kids to college. In this industry analysis, we look at a couple other businesses or models in the kicking industry that do that. So Chris Taylor Kicking and Punting is by far the most prevalent, well-known kicking business led by Chris Taylor. His model primarily focuses on weekend day camps, which is only from about 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. for one day. And athletes come and pay about $355 each camp, primarily just to get evaluated. There's not very much coaching going on, and simply Chris Taylor has a well-known relationship with college coaches. And because of that, he ranks the athletes that he sees at these camps, and that gives college coaches an idea of who's a good kicker, who's a good punter, and who's maybe not. The pro with Chris Taylor Kicking is that he himself, the expert, is at the vast majority of his camps. He has some where he has a punting specialist, where it's just a punting camp alone and not a kicking and punting camp, but overall he's at the vast majority of them. The negative or the con for his business is that he doesn't do much teaching. It's primarily evaluation and competition. The next business is Cole's Kicking, led by Jamie Cole. He does a lot more of coaching during his camps and small group sessions. However, he's not at every single one of his organizations. He sends a lot of one-off coaches to go and run the camps, and those coaches aren't as credible and don't have as much expertise as he himself does, and that brings a little bit of negative value to his business. Additionally, there are a handful of other kicking and punting coaches that typically have group sessions of about 15 athletes, and that will cost for an hour about $100 to $200 each athlete that's going to be there. That is primarily instruction, very little evaluation and ranking. However, it's a lot more spread out, a lot less well known. For this industry, based off the NAIC percent profit margins, we're expecting somewhere around a 10 to 15% profit margin, and that's a combination of day camps that are just typical day camps for any kind of youth camp, and then also sports trainers specifically. So we find a combination of those two. We're looking about 10 to 15%. However, as talking about the low cost that Gavin Jernigan and Kicking and Punting is looking for, is that our largest expense is actually minimized because we're going to be going to the kickers and we're going to be using their fields that they would be practicing on anyways. So that largest expense of renting out the field and the location, we're not going to have that. That's one of the ways that we're going to lower our costs while also being different. To continue on our industry analysis, we're going to be focusing on the area of San Diego. The reason why San Diego is a benefit is there are only 2 kicking camps in the San Diego area of all of 2020. Additionally, naturally as a kicker, a lot of kickers come from soccer because the movements are very similar. Well, there's tons of popularity of San Diego because of the proximity to Mexico and the high percentage of athletes who grow up and learn how to play soccer. Thirdly, the weather in San Diego is obviously beautiful. That's not necessarily the case where Jamie Cole is focused at in the Midwest and other places with Chris Hare when he goes to the East Coast, does his camps on the East Coast. Because of that, we're able to train throughout the entire year, providing consistent training and coaching that other coaches don't necessarily have when they have their evaluation camps. Additionally, we saw that high school enrollment is increasing steadily, and that's going to help us as well. Overall, our company structure is not going to be necessarily a sole proprietorship where we would take on tons of responsibility, or a partnership because there isn't another partner that I'm working with at this time. We're going to be a limited liability company where we're able to limit the amount of liability we have because we're working with minors, and we're going to put that on the company. However, we're not going to be taxed as much as we would if we were a corporation, which is the con for the corporation. For social media, the advantages that we see is just with any company, we're able to make our own brand and control what we send out. The disadvantages is that we can get a lot of negative feedback if we don't do a good job. Overall, our social media game plan is going to be focused on highlighting the successes of our athletes, showing plenty of good videos that of them kicking, their statistics and their improvements over the year, before and after, and then of course testimonials that they have. We're going to put a lot of focus into social media because we're going to be focusing on high school age students who are obviously on social media a ton. Overall, our core competencies is that we're going to be positive, credible, and committed coaching. Where a lot of coaches, when you think of like a football coach, you think of someone yelling at you, screaming at you, making you do push-ups, etc., go run. We're not going to be having any of that. We're going to be focusing on the mental aspect a lot of kicking and ensure that we give positive reinforcement. And we're going to be doing it consistently by establishing contracts with the high schools so that we're there on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, where otherwise they wouldn't have gotten if they're going to these camps. For experience and knowledge, there's not very many people who have kicked at the same level as I have and have the same experience that I have. There's only about 150 D1 schools, and of course only 32 NFL kickers. So that gives a pretty limited amount of people who have this experience and knowledge. Our location flexibility is going to be one of our biggest benefits as well, because unlike these other competitors where the athletes have to travel to those camps, we're going to be going to them, which gives us tons of flexibility of who we can work with and who's willing to work with us. And lastly, because of course we're going to have a consistent interest in our overall development of our athletes. For our competitive advantage, we have a resource-based view of this, which has value, rarity, and culture, and they're difficult to substitute. Our exceptional expertise via our endorsements, our detailed coaching, and our contracts with the local high school, and our travel component gives us tons of flexibility. Is going to be our competitive advantages over our competitors. As we can see, our first year costs, overall, we're going to be looking at a first year cost of $42,432. I can go over this chart with you specifically on the details, but this is just demonstrating that we've done all the research and what we expect to do. Some of our biggest prices are going to be our liability insurance, because we're going to have that as increased more so than normal because we are working with minors. For a profit margin, we calculated a fixed cost of $720. That costs travel, liability, website, and social media. Our variable costs are going to be our wear on the equipment and a salary that I'll be taking based off of the revenue, and then a unit price of $80 per hour per athlete. Our break-even point is going to be about 20 units, right around $1,600 in order to break even. So that means we only need 20 units for the month in order to break even. Overall, I appreciate you for your time. I'd like to open up the floor for questions and answer any questions that you have. Again, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. I hope we can continue with business.